Large intestine. Wow, my whole day is just zooming by. Okay. It goes so quick. Okay, so obviously the small intestine had the big job, right? What does the large intestine do? Well, there's not that much of the large intestine, first of all. It does begin right here with the cecum. That's the first part. Remember, the ileum was the last part of your small intestine. The ileum dumps into the cecum. There is a valve here, the ileocecal valve, and that valve will remain closed until it's time to empty into the cecum. Once it's this leftovers of all that digestion happens, once that enters into the cecum, it's going to travel up through the ascending colon, over through the transverse colon, back down through the descending colon, and then eventually make it down through the rectum and then out of the body through the anus. Now, so we have a control valve right here called the ileocecal valve. There's also a control right here at the exit, and it is a sphincter, and it has two parts to it. So we have an internal anal sphincter over here on the inside. And the way the internal anal sphincter works is all of this digested waste product keeps moving, moving, moving. Once it gets here, pushing that wall out by packing the waste material in it will actually stimulate the internal sphincter to open up. Once the internal sphincter opens up, you feel that. You'll be aware of it. You'll feel the urge. And that's when you have the ability to open the external sphincter voluntarily. Okay, so the two anal sphincters, the internal is involuntary, the external is voluntary. That's the one where you can hold it until you find an appropriate time and place, and then you can release the external anal sphincter. So that's the basic anatomy of the colon. I do want to mention one thing. Right here is an appendix. We didn't see any appendices because cats don't have an appendix. But that is a little patch of lymphatic tissue that we have at the colon. All right, histologically, yes. So your colon actually has a lot of bacteria, resident bacteria that lives in it. And the appendix is just sort of like a last checkpoint. You want to make sure you have your bacterial flora, the good bacteria that you want to keep healthy and alive, and that it's not overtaken by bad bacteria. So if you have bacteria coming in from the outside, something that's not normally supposed to be in your body, it can kill off your good bacteria. So your appendix is like a little police station just to make, keep everyone in check. If something's wrong, it can alert the lymphatic system to kick it in gear and make it attack the bad bacteria. So it acts exactly the same as your tonsils would in your mouth, but it's at the exit. You got tonsils at the entrance of everything coming in. You have your appendix at the exit of everything leaving. Make sense?
Even though both of those get removed at some point in your lifetime.
Mm-hmm. You're going to answer your own question. Yes. Even though most people have their tonsils removed, a lot of people have their appendix removed. You're like, so, So,
too much bad bacteria, or
anytime you ingest anything that has a bacteria in it or are exposed to it, your system can be exposed to it in any way. Like right now, I have most definitely have some type of bacterial infection going on because of, I told you I had yellow and green boogers and stuff, right? So inadvertently, I'm definitely swallowing some of that. It's pus, but it's not really boogers, it's pus, but I'm swallowing it. It's going to end up in my system somehow, whether it gets through there or through bloodstream or whatever, through my lymphatics. Any bacteria flowing through your body, whether you ate it or drank it or were exposed to it, you breathed it in somehow, that appendix will act the same as any other lymphatic tissue in your body. Wait, sorry, say that again because I can't hear that. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that healthy stock of bacteria that we need to have, the whole idea of probiotics is bacteria. Right? Probiotics are bacteria. The appendix. So look at where it's at. No. Like, so the appendix right here is like any other lymphatic tissue, like all of your lymph nodes, right? Your tonsils, everything. What happens when your tonsils get inflamed? What happens with any lymphatic tissue when it's exposed to bacteria? It can inflame and enlarge, right? Most of the time, the tonsils are okay because as long as they don't close up the opening to your mouth, no big deal. If it's a lymph node, I mean, if it's down here, it's not really bothering anything if it enlarges, right? Look at the appendix. The opening to the appendix, I want you to see how big this is. Do you see this opening right here? It's a tiny little opening. So when that appendix becomes inflamed, the likelihood of this being closed off is pretty high because it's a very small opening. So if it inflames and it closes off that opening, now you have bacteria trapped inside with this lymphatic tissue. And the likelihood of pus oozing out and having nowhere to go is a problem. And that's why most people have their appendix removed. Because if you have an appendix and it bursts inside of the abdomen, you are going to have a mess. You're going to have bacteria and pus all over the place. Now you're talking about septic shock and dying, right? So that's why, number one, why it's easily impacted, because it's not very big and the opening is not very big to be able to flush anything out, right? It can be obstructed pretty easily. Number two, it's under pressure, so it's super painful. And number three, the likelihood of it rupturing is pretty high and dangerous if it does. So you take it out the minute you know that something's going on in it. You don't want to risk infecting everything in your abdomen, right? But in reality, the appendix acts just like any other lymphatic tissue in your body. Now, why can we remove the tonsils and remove your appendix and be totally normal? Because that's not the only location of lymphatic tissue. Remember, we just went through Peyer's patches for days in the intestines, right? We've got lymphatic patches all over the place in our body, in different areas, especially in our gut. And so removing the appendix is not a big deal. And then ask me, well, why do we have it? Because that's one question I cannot answer. And I've read a lot of studies, and I think it's like some type of remnant, but then that takes us into evolution. But I don't want to talk about evolution in anatomy, but it may very well be a remnant of something that has evolved and that we found that we no longer need. And so it slowly, changes. Just like, how our anatomy is changing and everything else changes from generation to generation. Yeah, but that's super cool, super important. Did that answer everyone's question on the appendix? No, that is what I call real life anatomy. That's the kind of stuff that you want to remember, because when you're in that situation, you just made yourself look 1,000 times smarter in front of all your friends, because you've been for real. And appendicitis is like the #1 suspect for acute abdomen. Acute abdomen is when you get a patient that's in so much pain, you can't even touch their stomach. It's so bad, right? So there's a little bit of more information. So, and then also it is very high on the rebound. Like if you have somebody just beginning to have appendicitis and you push down on that where the appendix is, which would be the lower right quadrant, and then you can push down, they'll be okay with you pushing down, but you let go and they're in excruciating pain, right? Now you know. And the whole point of this large intestine, really, remember 90% of everything that's happening is happening in the small intestine. The large intestine takes the waste products that we didn't digest. It packs it all up, sort of like the trash collector. There'll be a little bit of absorption of water. There will be some vitamins that are absorbed. All of the digestion that's happening in the intestines is only like 10%, but what does happen is done by bacteria. That's the job of that bacteria, is to break down whatever's left and help us make a few vitamins even in the process. Okay, so microscopically, histologically, in the colon, there's not a lot going on. You have absorptive cells that will absorb some of that water, and you have goblet cells that are going to secrete mucus. No big deal, right? Because we're just focusing on getting what remaining water we need, and then letting the bacteria do its job by fermenting whatever's left to create some vitamins for us. And then just a little reminder here, there are no circular folds or villi in the colon. Okay, there's not much absorption happening in the large intestine. Okay, so functions. We've got movement, and it comes in the form of haustral turning, peristalsis, even mass peristalsis, but the whole point of it is to move all of this waste to the very end of the road so we can empty it out of the body. We do have bacteria in the colon, and they play a huge role in breaking down whatever's left over of those amino acids and producing B vitamins. We will absorb whatever's remaining, that 10% of water that needs to be absorbed, along with some ions and the vitamins that we formed in the colon. It is going to form feces. What is feces? Stool. What is stool? Poop. Okay. Formation of poop, and then defecation is the elimination of poop or elimination of feces. Let's just make it scientific. I can't spell it. Elimination of feces from the body. All right, so that's really all the colon does. It just harbors a bunch of bacteria that ferments a little bit, produces some vitamins, absorbs a little bit of leftover water that we need, and gives you poop. So movement-wise, the three types of movements we're going to see are haustral turning, peristalsis, and then mass peristalsis. Haustral turning is really whenever you stuff starts to come in and it starts to pack, the walls will contract and push it down further. Peristalsis is that same worm-like movement that we saw in the rest of the GI tract. Mass peristalsis is going to be in preparation for elimination. That is when everyone's contracting. Struggles of a bad speller. How do I do it? I don't know. Okay. You can read this word, right? You can tell that says elimination. Okay. All right. So that is my mechanical. Chemically, what's happening? It's all bacterial. There are no enzymes in the colon, no enzymes secreted from the large intestine. So we're going to break down whatever's left by bacteria, and we're going to produce some vitamins like vitamin B and K. All of it's done by bacteria. So you should immediately think colon, bacteria. Whatever's done is done by bacteria. Okay, absorption. We're going to absorb whatever's left of water, that 10% that's remaining that our body needs, along with those vitamins and some electrolytes. That's it. And then feces. What is poop? It's a lot of water, actually. Water, inorganic salts, a lot of it is sloughed off epithelial cells, bacteria, products of bacterial decomposition, undigested portions of food, things like fiber we cannot digest, cellulose we cannot digest, so corn. There's a lot of things. If our body can't break it down, all those fibers and things. We can't break it down into basic amino acids or monosaccharides or triglycerides. We can't absorb it into our bloodstream. So if it can't be absorbed, it's going to be feces. Huh? You know, I thought about that just yesterday, as a matter of fact, because I got home. There's no real nutritional value in it. Let's just say that. Because I love corn, and I got home last night. It was late, and I was tired. I'm like, man, I just opened up a can of corn. I'm like, why do we even eat corn? Y'all want to hear something? Okay, way back in the day, I had an au pair when my kids were like really, really young, and she was from France, like this young 18-year-old French college student that came to live with us for like a few months. And the first time we had a barbecue and there was corn, I cannot tell you what she did, because she looked at us like we were insane. And I was like, what, you don't like corn? I was like, oh, it's good, you don't like it? And she was like, no, we feed that to the chickens. People don't eat corn. She's like, people are not supposed to eat corn. It's only for chickens. Yeah, she refused to touch the corn because that was just for the chickens. So I don't know, maybe it's true. I don't know why, but everything's here for a reason, right? And it tastes good. So, well, no, we can't digest corn. So we were talking about this the other day, and somebody said, yeah, you can basically tell what's undigestible, whatever comes out exactly the same way as it went in. But that's not always true, because sometimes you may be ill, you may have something that's making this movement go too fast through your GIT, and it doesn't have a chance to be digested. So sometimes we have undigested food that passes simply because the time that it needed in the intestines or in the stomach was not long enough for it to be broken down. Okay, just a quick look at our fluid balance on the that's left. On the left side over here is everything that we take in or produce. Basically everything that travels through your GIT. You've got 1 liter of saliva, you have 2 liters you drank, 2 liters from your stomach being produced as gastric juice, 1 liter of bile being produced by your liver, 2 liters as pancreatic juice coming from the pancreas, 1 liter of intestinal juice coming from the small intestines. That should total about 9 liters traveling through this GIT. What do we take back into our bloodstream? We will take from the small intestine absorption of about 8 liters and about 1 liter from the large intestine, giving you a total of 9 liters. I didn't put this up here because I want you to memorize the numbers. No, I put this up here because I want you to realize that the idea of everything we take in or produce at the end of the day pretty much equals what we put back into our body. So when you talk about recycling, our bodies recycle more than anything on the planet. Everything, I mean, even the gastric juice that we are producing in our stomach is going to be absorbed again in the form of water and then come back again as gastric juice. I know, super cool. But anyways, that's the whole balance of homeostasis. Is the idea is that, you know, you take in what you put out and you keep it that way so you can stay level. Okay. So this is a defecation reflex, that is pooping. Not really important, but we can talk about it. So once that waste products are packed into the rectum, that is going to stretch the walls. You have receptors that will fire an impulse, go to your spinal cord, come back with a motor neuron, tell that internal sphincter to relax, and then you're also going to have the urge at the same time, or notification that that's going on. Then you can go in and open the external sphincter. Simple, basic. Do I need to stop? Yes, we're on time. Okay, so we'll pick it up from the pancreas. We have the pancreas and the liver left. There's not too much left in here. Pancreas is one of those accessory organs that aids in the digestive system, even though it's not part of the GIT, which is the gastrointestinal tract. Remember, it's below the stomach. It sits in that curve of the duodenum, and it opens up into the duodenum with a duct. The pancreas has an exocrine function and an endocrine function. The endocrine function was the part that secreted insulin and glucagon And it's the part that we're going to take with the endocrine system. Not now. That'll be the next unit. And that was the islets that you're going to see or have already seen in lab. We're going to focus on the exocrine function, which is the part that creates and secretes pancreatic juice, and that pancreatic juice is going to have enzymes that will aid in digestion of things like carbohydrates, nucleic acids, proteins, fats. It will also contain sodium bicarbonate, which will help buffer the acid in the stomach. Remember, the duodenum was the first part of the small intestine in which all of the stomach contents, that chyme, was being thrown into. It is very acidic, so we need to neutralize it. And we did that with Brunner's glands in the duodenum and also with that bicarbonate coming from the pancreas along with bile. Okay. So I told you the pancreas opens up into the duodenum, as does the liver and the gallbladder. Okay, so the liver's producing bile. The gallbladder is storing bile. Both of those will have ducts that join each other into one common bile duct. That's, thank you. Oh, there's McKinley. One common bile duct that opens up into the duodenum. Pancreas will also have a pancreatic duct that opens up with that common bile duct. So everybody is dumping. I love this weather, by the way. Both liver, gallbladder, and pancreas all dumping their contents into the duodenum in the same area. And this is what it looks like close up. So you have in green, this is that common bile duct. There's that pancreatic duct. The two join each other to give you a hepatopancreatic duct and opens up right there. No big deal. And here's what it looks like in the real life image. Yep, I'm over it. All right, let's talk about the liver. I can't believe we're this far behind. Y'all never ask questions. All right, let's talk about the liver. What does the liver do? Yeah, did you just read that? All right, so the liver and its accessory organ, the gallbladder. Liver is a huge organ on the right upper quadrant of the abdomen. There's two lobes to the liver. The liver has several functions, which we'll talk about in a minute. The two main ones that we've talked about before is detoxification of everything and producing bile. Bile is very important for fat emulsification and absorption. Liver produces it, stores it in the gallbladder, and then they both secrete it into the duodenum. So this is that same, over here, this chart on the right is the same thing we just talked about. You have your common hepatic duct carrying bile. You have a cystic duct coming from the gallbladder carrying bile. The two together will give us a common bile duct. They'll be joined by the pancreatic duct from the pancreas, and they all open up into the duodenum. Cool? All right. Histologically, the liver is made up of hepatocytes. That is your main liver cell. We've already seen this in lab. It should be familiar, right? And then in between those rows of hepatocytes, there are blood sinusoids, which we've already seen, but there are also bile canaliculi, which we have not talked about. So bile canaliculi are basically the same type of structure as a sinusoid, but instead of carrying blood, they carry bile. So if you look at this picture over here on the right, or on the bottom, remember you had your central vein in the center. You had your portal triad over here. The portal vein, what was it doing? It was bringing in venous blood from where? Anyone remember? Venous blood from all of your GIT. So the venous blood coming from the stomach goes to the portal vein. The venous blood coming from your intestines goes to the portal vein. And that's important. Why? Because everything that you absorbed, you digested and absorbed from your stomach, from your intestines, goes into the portal vein before it goes anywhere else. So it brings all of that blood along with all of the nutrients and the drugs and whatever else you decided to ingest, alcohol, whatever, it all goes to the portal vein. It all travels through the sinusoid towards the central vein, so that by the time it gets to the end of that lazy river ride and it's in the central vein, those hepatocytes have had a chance to get in there and do their magic, right? Okay, at the same time, if you look over here on the right, those hepatocytes are also producing bile, and bile is going to flow in the other direction towards the triad. So bile's being produced, it seeps into that bile canaliculi, and then it travels on its lazy river ride over to the bile duct that's found in the hepatic portal triad. Now you guys know why we stress the triad in lab. Did you have a question? What? No? Okay. Make sense? Yes. And what are those cells called? Hepatocytes. Hepatocytes. Awesome. Okay. And here's what they look like histologically. And here is the blood supply of the liver. This should already be stuff you already know, right? We had a hepatic artery. What does it do? It brings in fresh oxygenated blood to nourish the liver cells, those hepatocytes. So hepatic artery is bringing fresh blood in. What about the portal vein? That is bringing the venous blood from your GIT. Okay? All of that goes to the liver. It's going to travel in the sinusoids. So when that travels in the sinusoids, the hepatocytes are getting oxygen, and at the same time, they're being exposed to portal vein blood, which will have nutrients in it and deoxygenated blood. It's going to take the nutrients that we need. It's going to detoxify the drugs that we've inhaled or ingested or snorted or whatever. It's going to take care of any, any hormones that need to be processed. It's going to do all of that. Then it's going to put it in the central vein. All of those central veins will collect and eventually become the hepatic vein. Hepatic vein is going to go dump its contents into the inferior vena cava, which goes to the right side of the heart, the right atrium, right ventricle. And then where does it go? Pulmonary artery, lungs, comes back through pulmonary veins, left atrium, left ventricle, and then comes back to your body. Make sense? Nobody cares. Okay. All right, functions of the liver. Metabolism. It's going to help us metabolize those carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins that were absorbed in the GIT. It's going to process hormones and detoxify drugs. It is going to produce and excrete, well, it's going to excrete bilirubin and produce bile salts. The two together are going to be my bile. It's going to store. What does it store? What does the liver store? Huh? Right, exactly. The liver is our main storage compartment for glucose, and it does that in the form of glycogen. Good job, Erica. Almost put a smile on my face there. We also have cells in the liver that have the ability to phagocytose, eat up any of the bad guys or bacteria. And we have vitamin D precursors that are being activated into an active form of vitamin D, all happening in the liver. Huge organ, huge job. Can't live without it. Okay, so let's recap 3 hormones that influenced our digestive process. We mentioned them before, but we're going to focus on them a little bit here. Number 1 is gastrin. Do you remember where gastrin is secreted? In the stomach, right. So your G cells were secreting gastrin. What does gastrin do? It is going to regulate the acid production in the stomach, meaning if I have a high-fat meal that requires more acid or high protein, I need more acid to break it down. Gastrin is released by those cells in the stomach and those gastric pits, and then my stomach decides it needs more acid, so it adds more acid. What about cholecystokinin? Cholecystokinin It's secreted in the duodenum. What does it do? It's going to stimulate secretion of those pancreatic enzymes and bile. So anytime fat is increased, or the content of fat that needs to be digested and absorbed is increased, my bile secretion will be increased along with those pancreatic enzymes through the use of this hormone right here, cholecystokinin. Our last hormone is secretin. Where is secretin? It comes out from the duodenum, and it stimulates secretion of enzymes and buffers from the pancreas. So if I'm finding that the stomach had to produce more acid and I need to buffer it a little bit better, I can have secretin secretion that will require or that will initiate more of that buffering solution to come from the pancreas. So it's the duodenum's way of saying, hey, we've just been hit by a lot of acid. Can you please up the buffers because we're dying over here? Up the buffers. I need a buffer from my life. Oh yeah, just saying. Okay, I'm gonna skip this one because it's stuff we already talked about, no big deal. What? I don't think they'd work for me. Okay. No, not there yet. Okay, so this is just a summary of those organs, what they do and how they do it. You guys can look at that if you want. It has all the different cells. I do expect you to know the cells and the hormones and what the purpose of each organ is, what it does. Bless you. That takes us to one last slide that I want to talk about. Oh yeah, and I like to talk about this just because it's like super, super cool. Okay, so there's phases to our, to the process of digestion. Sometimes I forget. English is my first language and it's not, like I can't even speak my own language. Okay, we have phases. We have a cephalic phase, we have a gastric phase, and an intestinal phase. Obviously the gastric phase is when food hits your stomach. The intestinal phase is in the intestines. What about the cephalic phase? Where's that? Yes, yes. So cephalus is the head, right? The cephalic phase is in your head, and it's super, super cool because it's going to stimulate gastric secretion and motility. Well, what does that mean? It means that you actually begin the process of digestion before you even put anything into your mouth. Okay, this is the phase where you walk into a restaurant and you smell someone's meal, right? Or you smell the food that's cooking, and all of a sudden your mouth is watering, your stomach starts churning. It's mentally, you know that you're about to eat, so you are preparing to eat. Your body physically prepares for it. It increases your salivation. It increases all of the secretions coming from your GIT. It starts moving things around, getting ready for this meal. And that is super, super cool because not only do we have a cephalic phase for our digestive system, we have cephalic phases for other things, right? Like if you are changing into like workout gear and you're getting ready to go to the gym to work out, you've now entered the cephalic phase. Your body starts kicking up your metabolism. It'll increase blood flow to your muscles. It prepares physically for something that you have decided to do mentally, right? Amazing, because then all you have to do is, you don't have to work out, just psych yourself out. Tell yourself you're going to work out. For real, you've already increased your metabolism, then you can just chill and just keep doing it every couple of hours. Like, I'm totally gonna go work out right now. And then it's just as if you worked out. But then, yeah, same thing happens if you have, like, say you're on a team and you're going to go play, you know, a game. Adrenaline's pumping before you ever get there, before you step foot on that court or even, you know, get your uniform on. The minute you know you're mentally preparing for something, your body begins to physically prepare for it. So I just think that's super cool, and I like to talk about it. And the idea that you don't have to work out, you just have to psych yourself out into working out. We can actually psych ourselves into a lot of things, believe it or not. You just have to believe it.